Hey everybody, I'm Jessica here today for an exciting talk about solo games. This is one of the most exciting times of year because Kevin from the One Player Guild, who is awesome, compiles a bunch of data as people vote for their top solo games of the year. And there is the People's Choice Top 200 that's out there right now, which I will link to. So cool to go through that list and see how many different games are on there. I will just note that, remember, it is all for fun. There's going to be games on there that I like and you don't like, that I don't like and you like, and that's fine. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. Lots of cool games on there, and as the breaker of wallets over here, that is probably the list that breaks my wallet. But what I wanted to do was to go through my top 10 solo games of 2022. And these are games that are not new releases, but just my favorite games of the moment. And this typically means that these are games that have stood the test of time. So there's no new releases in here. These are just my all-time top solo games that I voted for this year. So let's get into it. Number 10 is Orchard, a 9-card solitaire game. Love this one. Super small package, very small play area. You are overlapping cards and creating an orchard with different trees. Dice are used as trackers, which is a really nice way to use dice, so you can hear them. And if you see pictures, yes, there are dice, but you're not using dice as you might think. This one is very quick, but very thinky. Getting a high score is very difficult and very challenging, and for just using 9 cards during a play, it just works so well. I love this one for what it does, and it has stayed up near my top 10 or 20 games of all time. Absolutely love it. Highly recommend it too. It's a fun one, and if price point is an important thing, this is going to be a very affordable game compared to some of the other ones in my list, which you just know what's coming. They're out of print and hard to find. I'm terrible, aren't I? My number 9 game is Mr. Cabbagehead's Garden. So you're either looking at this and saying, wow, that's whimsical and I love that artwork, or you are skipping ahead and being like, I'm done. No, not vegetable people. But this is a really cool game about creating a vegetable garden. So you're planting vegetables out there, you're choosing which ones to use, but you also have some neighbors, these types of people, hanging around who want to steal something from your garden or change something up or otherwise interfere with your business. So as you are choosing vegetables, you are also choosing how many neighbor tokens you're going to be drawing each turn. And the best part of this is when a round ends and you look at which neighbor tokens have come out. If you have the same number of neighbor tokens for the ones that have the most, so say you have 5 and 5, what ends up happening is they just get stuck at the gate, arguing and squabbling with each other, and they don't affect your garden. That is the best feeling. They don't touch anything. And that is a really cool element here. But at the same time, you're managing the garden and you are going for different awards and planting the different vegetables in various patterns or near each other in order to score victory points. This one, I have not gotten the highest blue ribbon yet. I mean, I think I get like the polite applause, like, yeah, you tried. That's what the gardening club thinks of my gardening skills. So I am still working on this one. Tons of variety, though, with the different neighbors, because you are using a number of them every game, and the different combination of them kind of changes strategies a little bit. I've played games where I'm like, you know what? I don't care if the mayor of Onion Town wants to come and visit my garden and steal something, because as long as it's not one of the other ones, I'm good. So, up next, number 8 on my list. It's a surprising one, maybe, but it is Thurn and Taxis. Love, love, love this game, and I always say, this is the type of fanfare that I would like every time I get a board game delivery. I don't just want the package dumped on my front porch. Come on, give me this. So if you're familiar, Thurn and Taxis is a bit of an older game. It is about creating postal networks and routes throughout Bavaria. And you kind of just get the cards, you're creating these different routes, putting out your houses to indicate where those postal routes are. It is a lot of fun. I'm not describing it great here because I want to get to the solo side because this is not a solo friendly game. You're probably thinking, no, that clearly says not one player. There's an unofficial solo variant for it that changes it up completely, but in a great way. It turns it into more of a puzzle. So what you are doing is you're actually managing all 4 of those colors. So you got red, yellow, green, and blue, and you need to manage the postal routes for all those, but in a very interesting way. So you're trying to get those out there, you're trying to create your routes, but you cannot just focus on one color. So I can't just say, yeah, I'm just gonna keep playing the red route. Here I go. Red, red, red. All right, fine, I'll move on to the other color. You actually have to cycle through all 4 colors before you can go around again. So you have to manage what you're doing, which routes you're closing out, when you're going to loads. I don't want to talk about loads. That is the one in the upper right that if it does not come out during setup in this mode, you will not be able to complete it for all 4. And that single route is always a challenge to get to. I just love it. It's a cozy sort of puzzle for me, very familiar. I really don't have to go through the rules when I play through it, and it is just a joy to play. Nothing crazy there, just making myself some poster routes. I also have board game boxes all over the place here, so pardon all the random moving around, etc. Number 7 is NEOM. And NEOM is a really cool kind of city building game that reminds me of SimCity 2000. We got to get it right. But in NEOM, it's a tile layer. So you have an area where your city is. You have a city center tile with some roads going out. And there is a cool draft process that you go through in the solo mode where you will divvy up everything into stacks at the start of each round. There's 3 different eras that you'll play through with different tiles in each of those. And you'll typically be choosing from somewhere around 4 to 6 tiles each turn. And so this is a cool mechanism because you need to make those decisions and try to figure out what you are trying to accomplish. There are also disasters mixed in. These are kind of rare. Only one may appear during an era. And there's also a variant where you can ignore disasters and play a little differently. But this one, so much fun. And I don't really have a lot of city building games. This one works really well, though. It plays quickly. My play time probably 25 to 30 minutes, which is great for getting through a game and enjoying it. And I get to have a nice city at the end. My favorite part, maybe, even when I score horribly, I can just gloss over that and look at the board and say, you know what, I'd like to live right there. And I just pick a little spot that looks nice. Preferably not the one where all the industrial pollution is happening, because I've had some maps that I'm like, please don't bring this to the real world. But this one, it's great to play. And I really like the where are we here? The artistic style. It's kind of like a futuristic one, but there's also a lot of little hidden Easter eggs. Like there is a Back to the Future reference if you look closely on one of the tiles. And just like some cute, fun little things that add to the fun of it. And that's NEOM. Number 6 is Paper Tales. You've heard me talk about this before, probably. Paper Tales, which has a cool box, but I promise you, it's Paper Tales. Paper Tales, the base game, you will notice, where are we here? Yeah, that's not solo friendly. There is an expansion to this, and that is the one that you need in order to play solo. It includes one of the best solo modes that I've come across for turning a multiplayer game into solo, because again, what you don't want to do is have a tacked on solo mode. Listen, if you have a multiplayer game that you have published and you want to say, well, let's make a solo expansion and let's call it solo friendly, please make it solo friendly. do the work to actually make it a good solo game. This is harder than it sounds. I appreciate all the designers out there who figure it out, who start off with, again, like Paper Tales. This started off as something that was not designed for solo, and they created something that works amazingly well. So what is the solo mode in this all about? Well, Paper Tales is all about card drafting, and card drafting plus area control are two mechanics that I think are difficult to move into the solo space. Not impossible, but they require something. It's a lot harder than having, a solo opponent who will block action spaces, who will take resources away from you. Very different animals, because with card drafting, there are decisions to be made. So how in the world do you make a solo opponent decide? And the answer is, you don't. In Paper Tales, the solo mode still leaves those decisions up to the solo player. So there is the Lich King, and that is a solo opponent. He is diabolical, multiple difficulty levels. But what ends up happening is he brings out a new card every round. And that card has to do with these two battles that take place. So you need to build up your army, but also during the card drafting phase, there is a way for the Lich King to gain points based on the cards that you do not take. It is an awesome mechanic, because what I do is I look at what cards I actually need to move ahead, because that's, the main goal. But then I also have to look at the cards I'm not choosing. And I have to say to myself, okay, am I giving up any victory points to the Lich King with these? And then if I am, could I use that card? Would that be better than giving these up? There are a lot of decisions to make. So at the start of the game, you really only have one card out there, possibly more depending on the difficulty level that you're playing at. But it's not too complicated. It's like, okay, so if a card comes out that produces gems, that's going to give away points, so I probably want to grab those. But as you get further along in the game, there might be 3 or 4 cards out there that the Lich King could gain points from, and so you have to really balance what you're choosing, what you're doing, planning again for those battles. There are buildings that you can build to put out for more bonuses. And the other cool thing with Paper Tales is that you have your units that you need to pay for to bring out there, but you have typically 2 in a front line and 2 in a back line. That's it. And the front line can take place in the battle, but the back line cannot. And then at the end of every round, they all age. So there's an aging mechanism, so they can't just stay around forever unless you potentially pick up units who can move aging tokens. It's very neat. But that's why I really, really love playing Paper Tales solo. Another one that I have not come close to mastering yet. Someday? Probably not, but I will continue to play and try. So number 5, let's get it because I didn't grab just the box cover. Number 5 is Gloom of Kilforth, which actually encompasses Shadows of Kilforth, which I also have. This is the Kilforth series. Basically, up front, you do not need more than 1 box. You can combine them all for a really cool experience, but you really just need one of these, depending on what theme that kind of draws you in. Gloom of Kilforth is an awesome narrative experience. I love this one. It has fantastic artwork. The box cover should give you a little bit of an indication, but it is, the box back might be, can we show a little bit there? A little bit. It has amazing artwork, and most cards include a little piece of flavor text, which adds to the storyline. So it doesn't actually define everything that's going on in the world. You do that as you take your character and travel all around. There is impending gloom and a big boss battle at the end. What I really like, though, is the narrative that comes out of this is awesome. I mean, awesome. I have had such great times just taking a random character. Because again, this one is you're going to be combining like a, what is it called? You have your race, and then I think you have your role, but combining those two, so you have a very unique sort of character in the world. I really don't think of backstories for my characters when I start these, but then as I go around, there's things that happen. I lose battles, I win battles, I'm hiding in the shadows, hoping that guy doesn't see me. And the locations are just fun to travel around to as you are gaining strength and trying to work towards that final battle. The other neat thing about the Kilforth series that I really like is that most cards that you pick up will be picked up as rumors. So for instance, you might win a battle, and let's say you pick up an armor card. There's armors, there's weapons, there's some items, there's spells. But let's say that I picked up an armor card. I would draw that from the deck, and I would look at it, and in most instances, I don't just get that armor. I didn't pick that up from whatever happened. It could be a battle, but I could be picking that up from talking with a stranger who I met and who is giving me some information, because that's what it is information. I pick it up as a rumor, and that card will have a location where I can find it on the map. So you have a 5x5 grid that you're traveling all around in. And so if, when I pick that card up, it's going to tell me, okay, this piece of armor can be found here. And then I have to look at the map and say, whoa, that's either way far away or, okay, I can get to that next turn so that I can pick up that armor, and this is cool. Which actually is a really neat mechanism, I think, because you're not just randomly drawing something. You draw it and you actually get to decide, is it worth it to go for this and to add this to my character? And when you actually visit that location of the rumor, it turns into an asset. And then you get it. So I should mention, with Gloom of Kilforth, those locations are kind of set in stone for all of those, the rumors. Losing my mind here. In Shadows of Kilforth, it actually introduces a more randomized system, so that you can, again, randomize where that card can actually be found. That is, again, that rumor and asset system I really like, but it is the narrative experience that I really, really love about the Kilforth series. One last thing I should say is that a lot of things, most everything, is resolved with the roll of some dice, which maybe for some people, may not be for others. But you can actually mitigate that, again, by turning rumors into assets and kind of figuring out what you're doing. Or you play it like I play it and you're there for the story, so if things go poorly, so be it. Oh, let's get some room over here. There we go. Alrighty. So number 4 on my list, I only grabbed the box cover for this one, is Codeword Cromwell. Codeword Cromwell. Which I can almost guarantee most people have never heard of this. You're probably thinking, what? Yeah, this is an out-of-print game. I mean, you knew it was coming. But you might say, well, why in the world is that still on your list? Like, do you even play it? I play Codeword Cromwell probably once every year or two, which, again, you're probably saying, it's number 4 on your list, though. How is that even possible? This is one of the games that always sticks with me. It is about a fictional version of World War II where the Germans are invading England. And this takes place in a small village, again, all fictional, where the villagers themselves actually have to defend themselves and the village from this attack. And it, on the surface, I was like, this is going to be hilarious. This is funny. Like, you're literally attacking with like pool cues, and there's the cricket club, and you have farmers with pitchforks going out there, and there's, test tubes of acid available in the school. And all the villagers, I think I want to say there's 16 of them. They all have kind of like individual storylines a little bit. And again, I went into this thinking, this looks like it's probably going to be pretty funny. If you have ever watched the movie Went the Day Well, this is basically that movie in board game fashion. And although I love adding little bits of humor to this, this is a very dramatic sort of game. The stories that come out of it of, everybody's in the pub and they're defending it and it's going well, and then things don't go well. And oh no, it really, like, my plays stick with me. They're memorable. And the other cool thing about this is there are random events that happen. So 2 villagers might be best friends, and if they can get into the same square, there's some bonus thing that happens. 2 villagers, it might be, out of randomness, just out of the blue, they can't stand one another. Something happened between them, so they can't actually be in the same square, or there is a penalty. Or somebody is just out of it. They're done. They're not taking part anymore. You could get a car or a motorcycle that comes in, and you can just zoom around. That can happen too. All sorts of cool things that can happen. But the other thing that makes Codeword Cromwell really neat is the fact that through all this, the villagers are all working together to protect the village and try to, fend off the attack. There is a traitor among the villagers. That's right. So you actually have to try to work to figure out who is the traitor as you are also defending the village. So for instance, there is a police constable who is great. I shouldn't say great, but better in combat than a lot of the other villagers. But he is also very skilled in trying to find the traitor ahead of time. So how do you use him? What does he do? There's all these different decisions to make, and it's a huge board. I didn't want to take out the whole, like, this is it. It's huge. So it's something that takes a long time to play too. I mean, my plays are probably beginning to end, and I take breaks. I've probably 8 hours. It is probably the usual. It might be maybe 6 hours would be if I'm going pretty quick. I've spent 12 hours with this one. So there's a lot going on. It's not perfect, but again, I think this is one of the games that just sticks with me. And when I play, it is memorable. It is a memorable experience. And yeah, there's a lot of dice chucking and a lot of luck and a lot of just stuff. Some of the rules aren't 100% clear. There's things you have to look up in some rule books. But even with some of the kind of the downfalls with it, I absolutely love it. It always remains in my top, I think it's always stayed in my top 5 games. It just sticks with me and is one of those games out there that I'm very sad is not available, because I always recommend it to anyone who is looking for sort of a simulation type style game, especially one that's more fictional. It's not based in a real battle. And it has some moments of humor in it, but it is a pretty dramatic sort of game. And when it's all done and over with, being able to make it to the end and surviving is awesome. Still love it. Let's see. Number 3 is Expedition Northwest Passage. And if you think this one is currently out of print at the time of this video, you're correct. It's another one that I picked that's out of print. But it does look like there will hopefully be a new edition or a reprint at some time in the future, so I'm excited about that. Expedition Northwest Passage, though, is a tile-laying game where you are in the Arctic Ocean. You are traveling to try to figure out where the Northwest Passage is up in Canada. So you have a ship and a sled and a small number of crew who you're moving and exploring and laying those tiles out. It sounds very simple, but it plays very differently because those tiles are all randomized. Every time I play, I get a different assortment of islands and all the channels, figuring out how to get the ship over and back, because you do need to go back home at the end of the game. And then the other thing that is really cool with it is there is a solar disk which sort of simulates the seasons. So this will freeze some areas. So this is very helpful for the sled because it can just go across water because it has frozen. However, if the ship does not get south fast enough, it gets locked in because everything's ice around it. So you have to carefully manage the paths that you take. And I've played this many, many, many times. And I should note that on this box too, I want to say, is it on here? It is. You'll say, excuse me, that's 2 to 4 players. And I will say, excuse me, there is an unofficial solo variant for it that was not included in the box. So there is one out there, and that's the one that I play. And I have played trying to get a complete map multiple times. That has been a challenge. I think I tried for a year the first time to get a complete map. Very difficult to do, but it is possible. With the caveat that the crew never make it back to Greenland. I'm trying. I'm still working on this and seeing if it's possible. But it's another one that probably plays in like 25 minutes. Pretty quick, very thinky decisions though as you're going through and trying to fill in those areas. I don't play with them, but there are actually sets of tokens that you can collect along the way as you explore and see new regions. So that's another way to play too, which, I don't know, I made up my own way to play and it works. But it's another one that I love, and I can't wait to see a reprint or a new edition of this. That would be awesome because, again, for tile laying and for exploration, I think this is a really fantastic experience. Running out of room here. Number 2 is Wizards Academy. I know, listen. This one's out of print and hard to find. I apologize. And I will note that I am aware that some of my favorite games are hard to find. So me talking about them, it doesn't interest a ton of people. But at the same time, I think these games deserve some recognition because they're not out there. And I just like talking about the games that I love. So I'm going to keep talking about the games I love and just hope that maybe this will get them reprinted or, get a little more attention. But Wizards Academy is a really cool game. You actually play as amateur wizards. And I mean that in a good way. A lot of games, you can sort of start as a magic user and sort of feel like you're kind of building up your repertoire, but you've kind of mastered it. There's not really any problems or anything. Like once you learn a spell, I learned it, there I go. This one is fantastic because there is a whole book of face-down spells that you start with at different levels. You have to collect glyphs throughout the academy in order to cast these spells. But again, they begin the game face down, and you may have some information about like, all right, I know this spell is in this section, but I don't know what else is in there. You usually also have botches. And what are these? These are bad spells. So, whereas a good spell might remove a threat or be helpful in some way, botched spells usually are like, oh, hey, by the way, sorry, you just started a fire. Or, oh, yeah, there's a demon portal in your room right now. Okay, bye. Like, that's what happens. But discovering what these spells are is part of the game. There's a whole book of scenarios to play through. I'm still working through it. It's very, very fun, though, because, again, those amateur wizards, there's different characters that you can play as. I usually play with 3 characters at once, and it flows really smoothly. Each turn, you start with a disaster card that you drew before that round, so you actually know what's going to happen to a certain extent. And then the academy can also, all things can happen to it. So you have all these rooms. I should know this off the top of my head. Is it 16 or 25? It's 16 or 25 rooms. that are all out in a grid. And they are connected or they're not, depending on if they have openings or walkways between them. And these can be rotated. Some of them can be moved or swapped. There is an outer dimension that's usually outside completely, that is just a room that's out there, not in the academy, but you might be able to get there. And it's really, really neat because the threat interaction is actually helpful in some instances. So for instance, let's say that there is both water and fire somewhere in the academy, right? The fire might be raging out of control. Maybe you have a botched spell that brings forth a flood into a room. Well, hold on just a second, because water puts out fire. So you can actually use botched spells to help you in managing those threats. You also have imps and trolls and demons that might be out there. There might be, I think there's ice, there's haunted rooms, darkness. There's a lot of things that come into play, and figuring out how to manage all that is really cool. And the scenarios, again, offer different things to work towards. So Wizards Academy, again, is something I really have never seen something like it. And you really do feel like you have no idea what you're doing at the start, just like an amateur wizard, as you determine what those spells are. Very cool. Ugh, I'm coming back, don't worry. Wizards Academy's crashing. Pull it together. And my number one solo game, probably not a surprise to anybody who knows me, that would be Obsession. Obsession has been my top game. I have to look back, but I believe since 2018 it's been at the top of my list. Phenomenal game. Let's get into it. Why do I love Obsession so much? It is challenging. You are playing against different solo opponents as you are managing a family's social circle as well as their country estate. You also have servants who you can hire some more, but who have to attend different activities. The social circle consists of different guests. Guest cards all have a little bit of flavor text, which adds to the little storyline. I always have fun. When the worst shows up, who would that be? An American heiress. You don't want those at your parties. Except for the ones that give you a lot of money, then maybe the reputation hit is worth it. But you are playing through this, and as you host an activity, you flip tiles over, so they are worth more points, but they also have another activity on the other side for the most part. You are adding these to your estate. There are monuments that can add reputation to you, but they're very expensive. The solo opponent, as I mentioned, is going to have a set amount of points, or not points, but the value of different categories during the courtship phases. These happen all throughout the game, and you are revealing what the very rich heirs of the county would like. What are they interested in? And are they paying any attention to your house and your family? You can win without actually winning any courtship rounds. Very difficult to do, but possible. But that kind of forms sort of an objective to go for, and it flows so nicely. This one probably takes me 30 to 45 minutes to complete. There's also there's a standard play, and then there's a longer play with more rounds and everything. I fell in love with this game when I first played it. It doesn't always look like a lot. This is beautiful artwork here. The tiles are not illustrated, so it looks very text-based, and I have seen, some comments that say, I don't really know the appeal of this. It doesn't look that great. I love the table presence when it's out here, and for me, I like to imagine what my different rooms and different things in the house might look like. It's just fun. And very, very challenging. The way it works with sort of rotating the staff or the servants through is very cool. So there's kind of a worker management piece to it. There's tableau building, both with your country estate tiles and with the guests that actually show up in your social circle. For me, the Gladstones were my nemesis. They still are. I mean, I beat them, but at the same time, I never want to hear about them. Get them out of the county. And there's, again, the solo opponents are all different difficulty levels, so you can kind of figure out which ones are maybe too easy for you, but then at one point you'll finally hit that and say, oh wow, I can't beat them. It's probably going to be the Gladstones. If you beat the Gladstones on your first try, I'd like to talk to you, because that took me a good 10 or 15 times with those Gladstones. And it seems like it's that way with a lot of other players too. But it's a very fun sort of rivalry that you have. The other cool thing about Obsession is that the base game is complete. So there are expansions out there available for it, but the base game is fantastic. So I included the Wessex expansion from the start. That one just adds a new family and a couple of guests and tiles. So it doesn't change the game versus just adding in a couple of other options. I used that from the start, but I didn't really consider that, changing the game that much. I played the base game 60 or 70 times before even considering adding in upstairs, downstairs. And I loved the game before upstairs, downstairs. So take that as you will, but for anybody who wants to check it out, the base game, perfect. You do not need to get everything for it to see if it's fun. But then I added in upstairs, downstairs as a side note, and my rating of this went from a 98 to a 100. So it's the only game in my collection that has a perfect score. This is why it is my #1 solo game, though. Everything just works so well. It is fun to play. It's funny to play. Again, with American heiresses and all these other things that might happen. But it's also a challenging and strategic sort of game that it's not a light game. And I love that about it. That I can go into this and really try to say, I am going to beat the Gladstones. I mean, I did once. There's no guarantee I can do it again, though. I'll have to, cycle back to them someday. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll just revel in the fact that I beat them once. But that, again, is Obsession. And that does it for my top 10 solo games of 2022, which is awesome to say because I have not made a video about my favorite solo games in the past. I've done some individual videos here, but seeing these all together makes me so excited because these are, again, my favorite games. So once again, thanks to Kevin for putting together that top 200 People's Choice solo games, or the other way, it's the top 200 and all that data, and to everybody who participated in voting. I think we almost had 1,000 people vote this year, almost. So hopefully next year we'll get some more. But those are my top 10 picks. Thank you again for watching, and hopefully you get out there and have some fun with solo games. Take care. Bye.